the talk by Professor of Physics, James Freericks at Georgetown University. He's going to be telling us about strategies that work for performing research with undergraduates, high school students, and private citizens. Take it away, please. Thank you.
Norman, you could stop sharing now, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Thank you for it.
Just as a check, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, and you can hear me fine? Everything is good?
Yes.
All right, great, great. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm here to tell you about research strategies that work. Why is this not working? No, I'm having some issue. Actually, I'm telling you about research strategies that hopefully work. And I want to start by telling you a little bit about me. I'm a theoretical physicist. I started at Georgetown University in 1994. And at that time, I was of the opinion that you needed to know so much physics in order to do research for theory, because I'm a theoretical condensed matter physicist, and most students don't take condensed matter physics or solid state physics until their senior year, that it was virtually impossible to work with undergraduate students in doing research. And it took me 16 years before I started working with an undergraduate. This was an interesting opportunity where I actually sent the student to Croatia to work in a lab there, and then we were going to work on writing a paper together. And the student is Greg Nelson, and we did write a paper. And then since then, this is Adam Keith. We wrote 2 papers together. He was a APCR Award finalist in, I think it was like 2012. This was Mike McKenney. He did an undergraduate research thesis with me. We wrote 2 papers together. This is Mary Beth Stork. I don't have her picture. She was an REU student. This is Eamon Khan. He was a Bose scholar, worked over the summer. Daniel Diluski did a senior thesis. Michael Lim was an REU student. Harry Han did an undergraduate thesis. Khalil Dixon was an REU student. Shankar Balasubramanian was a REU student. Jonathan Beretsky was an REU student. Thomas Kiley did his undergraduate thesis with me. Forrest Yang was a REU student. Both Dylan Cutler and Lucas Vieira Barbosa did undergraduate theses with me. Mike Rushka did an undergraduate thesis, and he completed 2 papers in the work with me. Jeremy Canfield did a graduate work with me, and Joseph Lee was an REU student. So these are the undergraduates that I've worked with since 2010. That's spanning about a decade. I've also done this with high school students. Juan Vicente, Shankar Balasubramanian, I actually started working with him as a high school student. Alex Jacoby and Maurice Curran were both high school students. We wrote a paper together. And I've even done this with citizens. So Mark Weitzman and I wrote a paper. He's a retired poker player. Bill Courtney was a retired engineer. Thomas Szymanski is a master's student, and Eduardo Gonzalez and Sheldon Rigo are an undergraduate and a high school student, and Nilesh Goel is an undergraduate. All of those people I met through the internet. I've never met any of them in person, at least during the time that we were working together. Now, I didn't show you this little cavalcade here just to brag. What I did, the reason why I showed it to you is that once you get started doing this, it's very hard to stop. So at this stage, I'm probably writing on the order of 3 to 5 papers with groups that are not traditionally people who write papers, undergraduate students, high school students, and citizen scientists. What is the key mixture in order to make this work? You need to find a win-win situation. Mentoring undergraduates, high school students, and citizen scientists can take a lot of time, but with some planning, it can be very beneficial. Having a publication with any of them is a success story. One of the keys is that you take the time to plan a project that is useful to you, that can be completed in the time frame the student has, and that should in almost all cases lead to a publication. And in fact, on the first meeting with a student, we discussed the fact that the goal for both of us is to finish the work with a publication and to be committed to that right from the beginning. I use a tiered mentoring system by partnering with junior members in my group. These would be graduate students or postdoctoral fellows. This is extremely important because it allows the students to, I just realized I didn't have my video on. I'll turn my video on. It allows the students to get a mentoring opportunity. If they want to get a job at a four-year college, or they want to tell someone, yeah, I can do work with undergraduates. Well, it's a lot stronger if they can show that they actually already have a publication with an undergraduate than saying, yeah, I think I can do it. So it really helps their career in the future as well. And now for some reason, my thing is no longer advancing. All right, here we go. You have to make sure your plan is in place before the students arrive. You can't try to work out the plan after they've arrived. There's so little time, any setbacks will be fatal to the project. As I'd mentioned, you want to make the publication a goal. An undergraduate or high school student's career is boosted significantly, even with just one publication on their record. In a tiered mentoring program, the junior member also gets a publication, which helps their career. The publication helps your career, especially if you're trying to get funding from the NSF. NSF loves this as a broader impact. Not every publication has to be a seminal result. You should think about publication venues where projects of complete but lesser significant results are worthwhile. Conference proceedings are a good place to think of for putting publications that you do with people from these different groups. You have to plan a project that can be completed. A 10-week long project has about 350 hours of research time. Year-long senior projects have about a similar amount of time. You have to be realistic in your problem selection. You want to make sure the project actually does have research impact, that it's not doing something that is uninteresting to your research program. Here's some things you might want to think of. Is there some data that you have that needs to be analyzed and can become part of a larger publication? Is there some instrumentation development, calibration, testing, software that's crucial for future projects that can have features of it made into publishable results? Because again, remember, the goal is not to just have research, but to have research that will lead to a publication. Do you have data that needs to be visualized in a novel way? I've done a number of projects with students on data visualization. Do you have an exploratory project that would be useful to report, whether it's successful or not? And then here's what I think is the most important key: managing the project. You have to meet, if it's a summer project, you have to meet with the student and the junior team member every day, at least for 30 minutes. If it's an undergraduate thesis project, you should be meeting with your student twice a week. You have them report on the progress they've made, plan the next things that they will do, and you hold these meetings whether you're traveling or not. It might be you have to hold them by email or Zoom, but every day you meet and have contact with the student. You have the students start a research notebook from the first day. I find Overleaf is very good for this because it helps them to develop LaTeX skills as well. You require their entry. You require them to make entries and report their progress as it's completed, and then you can review the notes beforehand and discuss them and correct them with the students during your meeting. The junior team member, one of the roles that they can accomplish is to actually handle a lot of the minutia of the mentoring. How does the student get a program to run? How do they print a file? How do they turn on an experimental apparatus and so forth? The junior members are very devoted to do this and motivated to do this because they have a publication on the line. And it also helps them with their mentoring experience, learning how to work with people who are even more junior than them. You should plan how the project is going to end well before your time with the student has ended. I usually discuss the figures and how we'll present the data 2/3 of the way through the project. They should generate this figures as early as possible that will go into the paper, because that's actually the way that you're going to start working on the writing of the paper. It will also guide them with how to present their data. You have to lead them through the writing process. Start with the figures that will tell the story. Ask them to figure out and tell you what the story is that you want to tell. Then the words that go with the figure will help them develop the story. And the story has to be focused on the science. It's very important that you make sure that the students do not try to write a paper that is a personal historical account of their journey through the project, because no one cares that this particular aspect was hard for them, or they had to look up this resource to find an answer, or other things like that. Their goal is to explain the project in as clear and logical a way to the audience that they're writing for. And this is a very common mistake that junior people make, because what they primarily know is the history that they had when they went through the project. In many cases, the paper's not written at the time the student leaves, but if the writing has started, it's usually very easy for the student to continue to contribute to finish the work. If they are unable to, you have to be prepared yourself. Remember, you committed to a publication at the beginning, or have your junior team member finish it. In rare circumstances, more work is needed, and then you have a couple of different options. Can this be a project that's shared with a new student and have them start from the previous student's notebook? Can the current student continue to work on this? I have actually advised remotely a number of senior theses with RU students to complete the projects that they were working on. Can the junior team member or you finish the work? So in the end, I'm going to conclude with the question, is it worth your time? My answer is, you bet it is. And thanks for listening. And I ended a little bit early because I hope we can have some discussion about this with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. These are fantastic topics, right? I like it that we've been talking about how juniors mentor other students, right? You know, undergrads mentoring other undergrads, graduate students mentoring undergrads or high school students. So yes, I do hope that you'll get a couple of questions on this. Anything on the chat? Not yet. Oh yes, there is. Can you see it?
So I see, as high school students, how can we go about connecting our students to opportunities like this? Well, if you want them to work with a person at a university, you have to, find people who are willing to do this and have the students get in touch with them. If you want to be doing it yourself, you need to follow this recipe. The most important thing is finding a project that's a worthwhile project that the student can complete. And I'll mention one other thing which is incredibly important. You need to talk to the student and find out, what do they want to do? What skills do they bring to the table? Oftentimes students don't know that the fact that they know JavaScript programming is an incredible asset to you, because you have a project you'd like to do that involves animations and you're going to be doing them in JavaScript, or other things like this. I had a student do a project on 3D printing when 3D printing originally came out, because he had spent the time to learn how to work a 3D printer. So there's lots of different opportunities for how to do that. I see a second question from John Schiller. How do you recruit high schoolers to participate? I actually don't go out and actively recruit them. I get probably every year 3 or 4 emails from high school students saying that they want to do something. They want to do some kind of a project. This is, it might be something about the DC area. There are a lot of high schools that require their students to do research projects as part of magnet schools. But whatever the reason is, I get people who come to me pretty much every year. And again, in the early part of my career, I just disregarded all of those requests unanimously. I just wouldn't say that I had anything available. Now I look very carefully, ask them, what their skills are, what they know, what their interests are, and see if I can find something that would be a match for them. I see another one. Would you be able to mentor teachers so they can start a research project at that school? I'm a 2-year community college instructor. I mean, sure, I can, you know, talk you through how to do it. I can also, if we share this this program, the steps that I put in there, that's what I've done. I've just been doing that for the past 10 years or so, and it's resulted in about 30 publications. So, I mean, the process seems to work in doing that, but it really does require having a good idea for a project that the student can complete. Another question is, what resources at the university have been most important in making this happen? My question is resources. I get no resources for this whatsoever. Zero, zip, none. How much more difficult would it be to do this at a smaller college with few resources, equipment? Again, there you had my answer. Now, I'm a theorist, so I don't need a lab, but I've got nothing, you know, there's no resources available at all. With the one exception that an RU program, of course, pays stipends to the students over the summer. That's a big deal. It's like a summer job for them. I do ask for supplements in my funding from NSF to sponsor RU students, and that allows me to pay them a salary, a stipend. High school students in general, we don't pay high school students. They volunteer to do this. There are issues associated with this when you start thinking about DEI related issues. And if I had funding available, I would certainly pay students who would be unable to do it if they weren't getting paid. But I don't actually know where to get money to do that. It would be nice if there was such funding available. How much time do I spend per student total? That's a really hard question to answer. It varies quite dramatically, but I am spending half an hour a day for 10 weeks. So that is about 25 hours. If I've got that, if I did the calculation correctly. I spend time working on what they write up. I spend time thinking about the problem, and I spend a lot of time finishing these projects because many of them are not quite finished. It's probably on the order of about, I would say, 50 to 75 hours per student total time. That's like, you know, a week's worth, you know, 1 or 2 weeks worth of work. There's a comment, impressive, thank you. Well, you are very welcome. Thank you for the comment. And then Howard Community College students regularly do research. The program started with funding from NSF's STEM grant and is now partially supported by local business donations. So that's again another comment. Thank you very much for that as well.
Thank you. I think that wraps it for this talk. Thank you so much again.